Hello everybody, it's Jenny McGarvey and I am going to share with you today a process video how I create a page using that stamp set from Scraptastic Club it's called Cherry Pie, and then the Cherry Pie kit and add-on. I have pulled a piece of white cardstock from my stash. It is not textured, it's just a smooth white 12 by 12 cardstock because I'm going to be doing a lot of stamping on this page, so I wanted to make sure that I had the best surface for stamping. You can absolutely stamp on textured cardstock. I just didn't want to. Now I am trimming up the top and the bottom of that cardstock. I want kind of an angle at the bottom and an angle at the top. You'll see that as soon as I adhere it to this background piece of pattern paper. Do you see that right there? I thought it would be a fun way to incorporate that piece of patterned paper without it being too much, because as you can see, that's a really bold piece of patterned paper, and I thought that that would be definitely way too much. But adding the white cardstock on the top definitely takes away from some of the craziness of that entire piece of paper. So I'm just using my pink ATG gun to apply a lot of adhesive to the back of that piece of cardstock so I can get it all stuck on there wonderfully. And then that is the photo that I am going to use of my son holding up a pair of Donald Trump socks that he finds super funny. I'm going to mat the photo on a piece of yellow textured cardstock. I don't always mat my photo, and I don't always mat it on a piece of colored cardstock or patterned paper, but today it felt right based on the fact that I do want the photo to stand out, and the patterned paper in the back is very bold, and then I'm going to be adding a lot of stamping and a lot of embellishments. So I figured that that little pop of yellow around the photo would definitely tie in with the photo itself and also give it a little added bit of dimension, not physical dimension, but with your eye, and it would definitely help draw your eye to the photo instead of all of the other color and stuff that's going to go on this page. Now I had this idea that I wanted to create sort of a frame around the outside of the photo using a rainbow color scheme with a bunch of different stamps primarily, but then also add in some different embellishments, and probably ones that had a little bit more dimension to them. So like rubber charms or cards or chipboard, I'm sorry, enamel dots, those types of things. Since the stamps are flat and not providing any dimension, then using dimensional embellishments would kind of make it all fit together really well. Now I'm going to use a whole bunch of different inks from my planner ink pad stash because I want to use pigment inks as opposed to dye inks. I just happen to like the colors of all of these as well, and since I use them fairly often in my planner, I'm very familiar with and comfortable with the different colors that are included. Now I'm going through the embellishments that came in the Cherry Pie main kit because I was thinking that perhaps there were some rainbow colored ones that would work well, and there are, but they don't tie into the theme of the page. And so, like for example, there's some really pretty primary colored flowers that are acrylic, but the flower theme isn't really strong on this page, so I decided not to use them. So I go through and pick some of the other embellishments that were included in the main kit and in the add-on as well, and looking for ways that I can incorporate the Roy G. Biv color scheme with these particular embellishments that are included. There are so many different ones that are awesome. Enamel dots, rubber pieces, die cuts, chipboard. It's really super fun. So I'm very excited to sort of get to play a little bit and add a little bit of different things, since I just sort of have a loose idea of how I want to execute this plan. I know that I want to just create, like I said already, kind of a frame or a border around the photo, but I'm not exactly sure how linear I want to keep it, or if I want to go a little bit more, like let it flow a little bit freely. So I'm just sort of playing with some different things, including those enamel dots. Initially, I had put them down in sort of a triangular pattern and decided that wasn't really going to work for me, and so I wanted to have them just be lined up. Whether or not I love the lined up look either is not the point, but I like it better than the triangulated. And I like to include the enamel dots. They provide a little bit of shine, they add a little bit of round embellishment to this page, so it's a pretty fun way to include something just a little bit different. Now those LE Studio die cuts are really cute, and I knew there would be a couple in there that would be something that I could absolutely include, but then they are flat, so I'm not doing too many of them based on the fact that they don't add any dimension really, and that's what I've got going with the stamps. As you can see here, one of the really fun things about this particular layout is being able to work with that one stamp set and then figure out what things are just awesome and fun about it and adding different things to it. I don't have to use the same stamp over and over. There are so many included, and it's just a really fun way to get to use a whole bunch of different phrases and ideas that are there, but not be tied to a particular one or two, because often in a stamp set, if you're making a layout, one or two of them fit the theme of your layout, but you don't get the chance to use maybe a large variety of them. That's what's awesome about this particular page, is that I'm really getting to use a whole bunch of that one stamp set on one page, and that's really fun. Now that, like I said already, I'm using some inks from the stash of ink pads that I often use in my planner, and that orange is definitely one of those. It's a Versacolor ink pad. It's a pigment ink, and the long story about pigment ink is that it takes a little tiny bit longer to dry, and it sits on top of the paper instead of soaking into the paper. It's not dyeing the fibers like a dye ink. I am a big fan of pigment ink in my planner because then you don't have any bleed through and very little shadowing too. And that's really only with darker colors if you have any shadowing. And again, it depends really on the paper that you're using for your planner. But anyway, we're not talking about planners. We are talking about this scrapbook page. And there are not a whole lot of orange embellishments in this particular kit. So you will see that I'm really stamping primarily to stick with the orange part of the rainbow here. But that's okay, because the whole point of me doing this was really about sticking to stamping. So the embellishments are actually sort of a side note or an afterthought. The idea was really to primarily stamp on this particular page. I do love to stamp on my layouts, and I've kind of gotten away from that in the recent past, but I'd like to get back into incorporating some stamping because I love to stamp. It's super fun, and I think that stamps add a lot. They're different than a lot of the embellishments that are out there. You can also do layering with absolutely no bulk whatsoever. I'm cleaning my stamp with a simple baby wipe. You don't have to do that. You can actually just stamp off the excess ink and go on with it. But I'm not a particularly neat crafter, and so I often will drop my ink block or knock it over or something like that, and I don't want excess ink to get on my project or my hands and then in turn on my project. So I do definitely like to keep those stamps clean just so I don't make any mistakes or any goof ups, which are not the end of the world, obviously, but if I can prevent them, that would be wonderful, right? So now we're moving on to yellow, and luckily there are a lot of yellow embellishments included in this particular kit, so I'm able to not only add stamping but also add embellishments. And that's definitely one of the things about stamping with yellow, is that it can be a little bit harder to read, so I'm really not too particularly upset that I'm not going to do a ton of yellow stamping, because then I can read them. Now again, this is a Versacolor ink pad. Same thing as the orange one. It's a pigment ink. It's great. I love the Versacolors because they are really affordable. Those small ink blocks, you can get them on sale for definitely less than $2. And they are just really easy to use, and come in a wide range of color. So that's why I really am a big fan. So now you'll see that I'm also using stickers and rubber pieces in addition to the stamps on this particular layout. They add a lot of dimension, which is great, like I mentioned already. The orange doesn't have that since there aren't really any orange embellishments included here. And I didn't really feel like I needed to add from my stash or anything like that. There's plenty of stuff that works just great in the kit with what I have left over. And then, like I said, with the stamping, which was the primary thing to use in the first place. Lucky me, I have some fun little embellishments and enamel dots to go along with it. And so I think that's really fun because it really does help keep your eye moving around the photo with the different, using the different embellishments and the different mediums as well. Now see, there's another one of those LA Studios die cuts. Like I said, there weren't a ton of them included that would work for this particular page based on the color scheme, but it's awesome because there's enough of them that it really does just really vary all of the contents around this particular photo. Now we're moving on to green, which is awesome. We're almost there, right? And keeping with the theme of trying to keep it free-flowing and using all kinds of different embellishments, we've got the chipboard pieces as well. And one of the things I really like about these chipboards is the adhesive is great and they're not too bulky. They're really easy to use. And we're going to stamp here as well, like I said, keeping with the primary theme, which is stamping, and again using another ink pad that is a pigment ink and a Versacolor ink. I do have, I believe, a dye ink that is green, but like I already said, I'm really comfortable working with pigment inks since I do stamp a lot in my planner and I use the pigment inks in my planner exclusively. So I figure for me, I might as well stick with what I'm comfortable with using and I know how to use it best, as opposed to kind of learning as I go and using a different type of ink pad. One of the wonderful things about the acrylic stamp sets or the photopolymer stamp sets is that you can kind of play around with them since you can see through them how I want them, like you just saw me doing, layering kind of the whole sheet down on the page and figuring out which stamp will work best for me in this particular spot that I have. Because a lot of times you can pick a stamp and then pick a spot based on the stamp that you want to use. But I have a space and I have to pick a stamp based on the space that I have. So that's what's really great about these, is that you can do whatever and it's clear and you can see it before you commit to using it. Now because green isn't on my radar, it's not one of my favorite colors, it's not something that stands out to me usually, so I'm going through all of the different embellishments that I have with this particular kit, trying to find ones that are perfect to use right here, since I want to make sure that I get a wide variety. Now one of the bummers is that I did stick down the rubber little embellishment and that adhesive is really crazy and kind of weird. It's like these little sheets of adhesive on the back, and so moving it was a little bit of a challenge, but it's okay. As you can see, I was able to do it, and that's all that really matters, even if it was a tiny bit more difficult than had I not stuck it down in the first place. So I didn't want to get too far out to the left, which is why I moved it up to right next to the photo, because I wanted to keep it pretty tightly right around the photo, since as you can see, it's all getting big enough without adding any extra way outside. A little bit more green stamping and then we will be ready to move on to blue, which is crazy because that means we are getting very close to being finished, and this page is really coming into the rainbow effect that I wanted. But once you see that I add the blue, it really does change a lot, and so it really is a fun, rainbowy, Roy G. Biv themed layout, and I'm having a lot of fun with that. Again, another pigment ink I'll be using right here. This time I'll be using a blue VersaFine. VersaFine is by far my favorite type of ink to stamp with. I mean, I wish that it came in more colors than it does because it is so forgiving. Even if you're not an expert stamper, you look like you are with VersaFine. It's just formulated to give you really crisp images. and it's easy to use, and it just really is perfect. I highly recommend it very much. I use it in my planner too, and it's great for all those teeny tiny stamps with little details. It really picks those up and it looks great. Now I really lucked out with one of those chipboard pieces that I already put down. It's not only blue, but it's blue and green, so it works out perfectly in that space in between the two color schemes because it has both, so it really marries the two together very well. I use a lot of blue stamping just because the color of blue in that patterned paper is a really dark blue, and the kit comes with a lot of really pretty aquas, but not too many dark blues, so I'm definitely focusing on the stamping for this one, which is fine because, as I've already said several times, the stamping was really meant to be the highlight of this particular layout anyway. So that's easy and works really well. Now, as you can see by looking at this, now that I have stamped some of the darker blue, it really does feel pretty complete in terms of the rainbow effect, which is wonderful. I'm super excited about that, and super excited that I had a lot of different bits and pieces that made up the rainbow with this one kit and not having to go outside of my stash whatsoever. And then you just add one last die cut from that LA Studio package and it's perfect. Look at that. It is exactly how I had sort of envisioned it. Even though I didn't have the details mapped out, I only had an overall idea planned for this. It's wonderful because I was able to make it be fairly close to what I had in my head, and that's great. Now I'm just using the little October afternoon date stamp and stamping the date with the VersaFine, and I'm set in terms of that. And it turned out perfect. And again, I don't know that I've probably actually never used the date stamp with a colored ink before because I really tend to stick with black by and large, but it's just a fun way to fit in with that color scheme up there. Now I remember that there were some really fun exclusive stickers included and that they were primary colors, and so I thought, why not see if I can find any that will fit in some of these tiny little spaces. And wouldn't you know, I am able to do that. There's just a couple of little stickers and they match perfectly with the colors that I've already used, and then they just blend in wonderfully. So that was really fun also. Now I'm going to use these puffy alphabets from the Pink Fresh Studio to add my title, and that's going to be Funny Guy because that's how my son sees himself, as the sort of clown. He loves to tell jokes, he loves to be funny. And then that's it. The entire layout is completely finished once I get those alphabet stickers lined up to spell Funny Guy. Thank you so much for stopping by and taking the time to watch my video. I really do appreciate it. If you enjoyed it, would you leave me a thumbs up? It lets me know that you enjoyed the video, and it also lets YouTube know what kinds of things you like to see. Thank you so much, and make it a great day.